Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on where you are in the world. This is Gloria White, and I'm coming to you from Utah, USA. Now, the last section that I did, we're getting into the meat. We're coming out of the history of what's been happening with Russia, and now we're getting into the meat of the prophecy. Now, this is what the China miracle means. And I'm going to just read this entire section 3 without stopping. So, I hope you've been hanging in and following along and keeping up. I know that the first part was hard to get through with all the war and the history and stuff. But now we're getting into the biblical prophecies. What the China miracle means. Russia knew exactly what it was doing by timing its invasion of Georgia for August 7, 2008. It so happened that the world was engrossed in an apparently far more compelling drama at the time, the imminent start of the spectacular Olympic Games in Beijing. China used the occasion to announce itself to the world as a power every bit as vibrant and muscular as the athletes it hosted, unabashedly confident, radiating with national pride, exploding into modernity. China is on fire. There are simply no words adequate to describe this phenomenon, especially as seen by the eye at street level. One of our readers wrote us from Beijing at the Olympics opening ceremony. Economic growth figures, China's purchase of U.S. Treasury bonds and takeover of British companies. These can't capture in words what is visible to a person in this city. Ordinary people who still regard China as backward would be stunned into silence if they laid their eyes on Beijing, which is not as large as the main commercial city, Shanghai. In fact, judging by what I see, the day China surpasses the U.S. as the world's largest economy is much nearer than all the forecasts indicate. Critics groused about China's poor human rights, its authoritarianism, its support for corrupt regimes, its pollution. Correct as they are, their criticisms simply aren't going to stop this bullet train. This country is barreling into the future and in the process changing the world. There is a revolution. It is, in fact, a prophecy, a look at the future. This next section is called America Plus a Billion. In one sense, it's a question of simple math. China has 1.3 billion people, 1 out of every 5 people on Earth. That's America's population plus a billion. Now multiply any trend relating to society, economy, technology, food, or anything else by 1.3 billion, and you will see a huge global impact. And the trend in China is definitely toward bigger, faster, and more. China uses over half the world's cement. From having no highways just 20 years ago, today it has 30,000 miles of them. And those roads bear the weight of 25,000 more cars every day, 9 million more per year. Soon, China will be not only the world's biggest market for new cars, but also its largest car maker. It consumes 1/3 of the world's iron and steel. As of the end of 2008, China had 147 airports. In the coming decade, it plans to build 97 more. Each year, almost 8 million Chinese move from the country to the city. This urban migration is driving the construction of the equivalent of Chicago plus Detroit each year. Today, the United States has 9 cities over a million people. China has 160 of them. China's mushrooming economy is growing at 5 times the speed of America's and has passed Germany's as the world's third largest. In a single generation, China has lifted 600 million people out of poverty, half of them into the middle class. Such development is simply jaw-dropping, historically unprecedented. Here's why this trend is so earth-shaking. It takes a lot of resources to fuel such explosive growth on such an enormous scale. More food, more electricity, more everything. That's a crushing reality when over 1 billion people suddenly start gaining an appetite for consumption. The trouble is, some of those resources are already in short supply on our planet. An ABC News report, China Inside Out, quoted one expert saying that for China's mammoth population to enjoy affluence as great as America's, the necessary resources would demand another planet. What, and that is why, with just a pinch of foresight, you can see where this trend is headed. The world's hungry teenager. China is about to pass the U.S. as the world's largest energy consumer. Between 2000 and 2006, China's increase in energy demand exceeded all the electricity it had used to that point in history. Some Chinese factories have to shut down several days per week simply because they don't have enough voltage. The nation is making a valiant effort to keep pace with demand. In 2007 alone, it built new power generating capacity equivalent to all of France uses. It commissions a new power station every 4 days. Besides the 11 nuclear power reactors in operation and the additional 24 it is constructing as of 2009. It plans to build 500 more coal-fired power plants in the next decade. It already consumes about a third of global coal production. Meanwhile, those million new Chinese cars each year need gasoline. China already imports 160 million tons of oil per year, and this demand is skyrocketing, which puts additional unwelcome strain on global oil supplies. In 1998, China was a net exporter of oil. By 2008, it was the number 2 importer after America. China is the world's hungry teenager. In order to fill these colossal cravings, Beijing has launched an extraordinary outreach program into the rest of the world, forcing the issue. China has started by being an invaluable neighbor, making itself the top or number 2 trading partner of virtually every nation in Asia. Seeking strength in numbers, Southeast Asia governments strive not only to tap into China's new wealth, but also to embed Beijing in a thicket of organizations and dialogues to the name of community building and closer integration, wrote Ellen Frost in Global Politician. Conscious of residual weariness, Chinese leaders go out of their way to reassure their Asian neighbors that Chinese intentions are entirely peaceful. Unlike Washington, China has projected a sympathetic and listening attitude, offering aid and trade deals without immediately demanding anything in return. May 14, 2008. Beijing is also extending itself diplomatically, economically, and even militarily into anywhere and everywhere in the world with resources for sale. It has significant economic ties with all but 5 of Africa's 53 countries. It has stormed virtually the whole world of the Caribbean and Latin America. It has laid inroads throughout the Middle East. The government's goal is to do 100 billion in total trade with the region by 2010. After Beijing exhibits none of the qualms many Western nations do over doing business with corrupt, authoritarian, dictatorial, or even genocidal regimes, it doesn't ceremonize. It just floods other nations with cash, workers, infrastructure, weapons, and whatever else they need. Usually it leaves with resources, and in some cases, it leaves behind a political mess. Look at what is happening here. China's meteoric growth and aggressive chase for resources are forcing the issue on the rest of the world. Ethical hang-ups, amoebic ambition, bureaucratic sluggishness. These factors are starting to leave other nations out in the cold in the intensifying contest over Earth's wealth. China has upped the ante. Its success, and what could be viewed at this stage as soft imperialism, obliges other nations that want to remain competitive to step up. You can already see it happening. This is what makes these trends so prophetic. Military rise. To add teeth to its aggressive trade policies, China is working diligently to upgrade its military capabilities. In 2008, China overtook the United Kingdom as the world's second largest military spender. Though far behind America's $607 billion of military spending, China nearly tripled its military spending over the previous decade to an estimated $84.9 billion in 2008. The People's Liberation Army, or the PLA, is the largest standing army in the world, with 2.25 million troops, and China has 314 million men fit for military service. The PLA ground force contains 1.6 million men. This number can be quickly augmented. According to the UK-based research group Sino Defence, by an 800,000 strong reserve force, 600,000 armed police, and 10 million militiamen. One of the biggest growth areas in China's military is the PLA Navy, the PLAN. As China looks further afield for resources, it needs a robust navy to defend its maritime lifelines. April 2009 marked the 60th anniversary of China's Navy, and China celebrated by showcasing many ships that had never been displayed before. By celebrating the plan's diamond anniversary, China was doing more than fostering nationalistic pride, wrote Straffer. The review showcased China's domestic military industrial prowess in order to command global recognition of China as a significant naval power. April 24, 2009. China now has more submarines than any other Asian nation. Of course, despite its growth, China still lags far behind the U.S. and remains less advanced than Europe militarily. This is why China is looking for unconventional ways to level the playing field. China sees cyber warfare as an important tool for undermining the U.S. military's technological edge. according to the U.S. Department of Defense 2007 annual report to Congress on China's military power. In its annual report to Congress in November 2008, the U.S. China Economic and Security Review Commission warned, since China's current cyber operations capability is so advanced, it can engage in forms of cyber warfare so sophisticated that the United States may be unable to counteract or even detect the efforts. We just had that breach. China has penetrated America's defense networks, aircraft, banking system, and electricity grid so deeply that it could cause serious damage to the U.S. whenever it wants, according to the National Counterintelligence Executive Joel Brenner. China has also been caught trying to infiltrate the German government's computers. Space warfare is another way China is trying to level the playing field. People, we can see all of this happening now. How many years later? 10 years later? It's like in our face. It's not, whispers on the wind anymore. It's like front page news. Space warfare is another way China is trying to level the playing field. On January 11, 2007, China took the space race to a new level by shooting a warhead from a ballistic missile into space, destroying an old Chinese weather satellite. China exploded more than a satellite. It exploded the myth that China's space program does not threaten America. Christopher Bodine, writing for the Associated Press, observed, "The test is a shot across the bow of U.S. efforts to remain predominant in space and on the ground, where its military is heavily dependent on networks of satellites. Any potential conflicts in space would put much of the industrialized world's economies at risk." January 23, 2007. High-tech militaries like America's and the EU's are heavily dependent upon satellites. Dr. Ashley Tellis, an expert on China at the Carnegie Endowment, stated that China's space program is aimed at America's soft ribs in space, and that China could carry out a space Pearl Harbor. A terrifying reality. Watch the rise of Chinese juggernaut graphically presages a developing and terrifying reality that more and more the nations reaping the richest rewards in this rapidly developing resource war will be more assertive, enterprising nations, the more rapacious nations. They will also be more autocratic nations, those governed by tough, politically empowered leaders, those least encumbered by political correctness and bureaucracy. These are the nations that will strike aggressively, ruthlessly, to stake their claims and defend them. Sounds like Trump. This trend portends more than just a world dominated by more aggressive nations. As soon as you have more than one power acting this way, you have all the makings for intensifying competition and ultimately out and out war. Now, align these trends with biblical prophecy. Read Revelation 17 and 18. There you see a detailed, horrifying picture of an emergent empire of unprecedented rapacity. In order to fuel its furnaces and drive its imperialistic machinery, it will conquer nations, establishing colonies and protectorates the world over and raping them of their resources. In its opulence, it will seduce and deal with the globe's wealthiest corporate Mongols, riding their backs and enriching itself at the expense of the rest of the world. Those biblical prophecies speak of our day today, this time of America's decline, of China's rise, of global economic instability, and weapons of mass destruction proliferation. We are about to see the sudden, violent surfacing of this superpower. But this empire will not be China. It will be Asia. It will not be Asia at all. In fact, in view of biblical prophecy, we must view China's rise as being likely a provocation for this empire to rise up and strike. This passage in Revelation, along with dozens of others that provide more vivid details, is speaking of an emerging European empire, a resurrection, in fact, of the Holy Roman Empire. You can be sure it is watching intently what China is doing today and behind closed doors, plotting its retaliation. It simply will not be left behind in the coming resource war. You need to understand these prophecies. Their fulfillment is going to rock the world off its axis. Order a free copy of Herbert W. Armstrong's masterful booklet, Who or What the Prophetic Beast? Who or What is the Prophetic Beast? For a riveting study of this vital subject. Of course, we know it's the Vatican. The China miracle we are witnessing in prophecy is being fulfilled, for not only is it certain to provoke Europe to assume a far more combative posture in securing its much-needed resources, but China itself, along with its newly empowered and belligerent neighbor Russia, has a significant role to play in the events prophesied to unfold shortly. Keep your eye on China. Within a few short years, this nation, the ascendant, proud China that has emerged today, will dazzle the world. Watching it vault into great power status truly is a look at the future. Okay, and that's the end of part 3 of this booklet. Now we just have part 4 and part 5, and I'm done reading for today. So the next time you see me, I'll be having a new, different hair look and another shirt. And as always, I love you.